Hi, I'm Fong, producer and host for Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast, where musicians and experts come and share their stories and solutions for mental health and wellness. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like us, please follow us on social media at Check Your Head Podcast. And visit us at checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you'll find over 100 mental health resources that will assist you in your mental health recovery. Also, if you want to show your love, you can donate or buy the merch. We have superhero tees and hoodies for sale to remind you and your loved ones that you are superheroes every day. You rock, and we love you.
Time they would say that I was like pretty outgoing and comfortable, but I wasn't at all.
You know, Gabbie, I have to apologize. I paused my recording for a moment, and then I forgot to put it on.
That's okay. So let's start over.
Thankfully, we haven't gone too far. You're awesome. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and my bad,
Never
but
happened.
it's gonna be great. Okay, so Gabbie Hanna, you are an artist with a lot on your plate. You have new music coming out. You're an internet personality. You're an author and an actress, but you're also a mental health advocate. I really thank you for that. And you include a lot of your personal struggles and your insecurity in your art. But I was wondering, at what age did you first start noticing like some mental health issues?
I would say that I put a name to it and was able to recognize that I was dealing with depression. Even though I didn't quite understand what depression was, I was able to at least say I'm struggling with depression in junior high. So probably around 13-ish years old. I think 15 is probably when it got a lot worse. But if I was to look back before that, I think that I was probably dealing with a lot of different anxieties and OCD and stuff before that.
Okay. So do you know anyone else? I mean, oftentimes issues like that are genetic and they can run in families. Did you notice anything, going on within your family or maybe relatives?
Oh yeah, totally. There's so many mental health issues in my family. So it's definitely something genetically in me for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned before about having sort of a tumultuous upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
and that could also kind of bear into, some of the issues. What was going on in your family life at the time growing up?
There was a lot of fighting. I touch about a little bit on it in my book, where I just recently this year finally been able to look at it from an outside perspective, where I had a lot of anger for a long time about it because there was just a lot of fighting. But when I look at why there was so much fighting, it's because, my parents, they had kids really young, their own mental health issues, alcohol issues, money issues. And it was just kind of a constant fight, it felt like, from as long as I can remember. So.
Well, that must have been difficult because oftentimes when parents are fighting with each other, they may not be giving the nurturing love and attention that, your children need.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say definitely there was a lot of us, like my siblings and I, picking up the slack and kind of being the parents and taking care of their needs over ours and not really having anybody looking out for us. Except like my aunts and like my grandparents, like, definitely did their best. But then there was also kind of a time period where we weren't really allowed to talk to them too. So like they weren't a part of our life for a minute.
Okay. Well, I've listened to your YouTube videos and your podcast, and you seem so comfortable socially to speak out. But I was wondering, were you as comfortable socially when you were growing up?
I think it depends who you ask. I think that on the outside, I presented myself as a very outgoing, extroverted person, but it was really sort of an act to kind of cover up what I was feeling. Because like if somebody asked me, for example, like, what's wrong? Like if I showed up to school and I had a certain look on my face, it was the scariest thing to me for somebody to ask me what's wrong, because I would never tell anybody what's wrong. Like everything felt like it was a secret. So I overcompensated a lot, but I wasn't being true to my authentic self. I'm a naturally like pretty like soft-spoken and introverted person. Um, so I'm definitely more comfortable now because I'm expressing really who I am and talking to people who sort of feed my soul in that way. But I don't know, it's all an illusion.
Well, I think that's the hard part, is maybe taking down those walls because you've had them up for so long, and you were kind of protecting yourself from other people seeing something that maybe you were ashamed of. But I think, once you start to reveal that, I think that's when you really are able to bring in people, because they can, I guess, they can understand that feeling if they've experienced it themselves, which is sort of the healing part.
Totally. It's that's why mental health education is so important, because when I was a kid, I didn't recognize the things that I was feeling as something that wasn't something to be ashamed of. Everything felt embarrassing, or like opening up about things that were going on at home felt really shameful because I was carrying the weight of like my parents' decisions and actions. So I was just like, I wanted to try to present that I was just a normal person from a normal family as well, but
Mhm.
it's just not the case, and that shit'll eat you alive.
Well, I read one of your poems that really stuck out to me. It was about you as a child talking about monsters under the bed.
Mhm,
And it ended with saying something about monsters that were inside my head.
mhm.
And I was wondering, what are some of the thoughts in your head that frighten you or make you feel like there's a monster inside?
There was a really I couldn't even tell you how long time period in my life where I feel like I've just recently really come out of it of, when you spend a life being gaslighted and lied to and being made to feel like you're a problem, and not really learning how to have healthy relationships, it's hard to figure out, like, if you have a falling out with someone, like, was that my fault? Did I do something wrong? And it got to a point where I couldn't figure out if I was just like a bad person. Like I felt like a monster, and I had these thoughts telling me all the time that I should be embarrassed, I should be ashamed, or whatever it is. And then, you grow up, and finally, what I've come to realize is I was raised by narcissists. I sought the approval and love of narcissists. So then I continued to fall into these patterns of seeking approval, love, and affection from narcissists. So of course my relationships are going to blow up. And I myself was also displaying a lot of narcissistic behaviors because that's all I knew. That's what I was raised in. That was the company that I was seeking, and trying to differentiate what's, like, am I a bad person? Is this like a bad behavior? It's hard when you don't have something to look to as healthy. So then
Mhm.
finally I started finding these, healthy relationships that made me realize that, oh, I'm not an evil person. I'm not a monster. I'm not, I shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed. I went through some shit, and now I find people who love me and respect me and see the best in me and help me talk through things that are the worst in me. And it's so human. So I guess the monsters that were living in my head were just like the negative thoughts of, you know the the byproduct of a lifelong of being like gaslighted.
Oh, wait a second. You know what? I think your headphones shorted out because I can't hear you now. It's okay. We can not use them if you.
Is this good? Can you hear me?
Okay, that's good.
Perfect.
One thing I noticed though is that if you hit the wire, it seems to crackle a little bit.
Oh, I'll be very
Yeah.
careful not to touch it.
Oh, you're
I'll stop
awesome.
shifting.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course, I got to get myself some better headphones.
Okay. Well, let's see. You know, what I thought was really interesting is that you majored in psychology when you were at the University of Pittsburgh. So what was it that kind of inspired you to choose that? And what were you thinking about doing with it, with your career?
I think I went into psychology for the reason that probably 90% of psych students go into psychology, which is feeling like either you want to figure yourself out or you want to fix other people. Because I grew up around so much mental illness that it felt like my way of learning and understanding and hopefully helping others. But then once I was actually in school for psychology, I was like, okay, it's cool to know this shit, but I don't want to be a doctor. Yeah. I
Well,
was planning on doing that, and then I was just like, fuck this, I can't do this.
I know it's a long road to be a psychiatrist, and
Yeah.
it's so funny because I was thinking about that for myself, and my dad was like, "You do not want to do that."
Yeah.
And thankfully now I'm a music journalist so that I can interview people and still kind of, get these great
Right.
stories. But, you know, you talk about these mood disorders and it sounds like you've gone through some therapy, which is wonderful.
Hmm.
But what have you, there's a lot that I've read about you, but what have you been diagnosed with?
So mostly an array of anxiety disorders, ADHD, OCD, generalized anxiety, depression. And most of them I'm like working through. I've actually never gotten into medication. I'm finally, as I'm getting older, and my ADHD is getting a lot worse as I get older.
Mhm.
Now I'm getting to the point where I feel like I need to medicate that because I was very, very sure that I was bipolar, but I couldn't get a therapist to tell me that I was bipolar. And they were just like, I'm sorry, you're not, like, whatever. And then it turns out that ADHD kind of manifests itself a lot in very bipolar ways. So like mood swings or like that type of shit. So that it's mostly that, like PTSD, CPTSD is probably like the main overarching thing, and then under that umbrella is just different anxieties.
Okay, so CPTSD is considered complex PTSD.
Yeah,
And I'm just curious because, you know, we all know more about PTSD versus CPTSD. How
hmm.
would you explain the difference?
So I don't even think that CPTSD is in the DSM-5. Is it
Hmm.
DSM-5? Yeah. So that's more, I guess it's more so just like PTSD would be the actual diagnosis of it. CPTSD is for people who have lived in prolonged situations. So PTSD would be if you got into a car accident, you went to war, very situational things. CPTSD would be living in a household with abuse, being in a long-term relationship with abuse, often than not on top of another, because usually when you grow up in abuse, you land yourself in abusive relationships.
Mm.
So it's more about, it's not a one-time situation that causes the post traumatic stress. It's a prolonged lifestyle.
Okay. And the C stands for complex.
Hmm.
All right. One thing I was really interested in is that at one time you had an eating disorder and also body dysmorphia. And I think it's really important to kind of explain that because there are quite a few, people and young adults that are suffering with that in
Totally.
silence.
Hmm.
How did that start? And, can you explain a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So I actually wrote about this for the first time in my book too, and it's something I never really talked about before. But my eating disorder. Sorry, did that crack?
No, it was fine.
Okay. Uh, my eating disorder started, I remember the moment that I realized that I needed to care. And I was a kid. We had a campfire. I was eating a hot dog and I couldn't finish it. And I said, "Does anybody want the rest of this?" And my mom said something along the lines of, like, Jesus, why do you have to eat yourself to the point of being full, or like stuffed? Why can't you just eat a normal amount of food? And then that was the first time I was like aware of my body and what I was putting in it. And from then on, it was just like food was always a thought for me. And then as I got older, growing up without money too, like we're eating junk food, we're eating processed food. I have no idea about nutrition. Like that information wasn't really shown to us. Obviously, we could have researched it, but how? Like, there's so much stuff out there. So it wasn't until I was maybe like 25 years old that I finally kind of came to terms with it. It had gotten to a point where I suppose it's a form of bulimia where I would just eat and spit everything out. Like, I would allow myself my safe foods, my healthy foods, and then there were the foods that were deemed my guilty foods that I wasn't allowed to have, like cookies, chips, cake, and I would eat them, chew them, spit them out. It caused fucked up metabolism, fucked up my teeth. Um, there were times like I would be at an event and I would put something in my mouth and immediately regret it and then have to find somewhere to spit it out because like I could not force myself to swallow it when, logically, if you're thinking logically, that one bite of chocolate cake or whatever it is that I'm so desperately trying to find a place to spit it out, that's not going to make me fat. But in my head, I would have woken up fat if I allowed myself to swallow it. So it was like a really, really long, lifelong, and difficult journey.
Is that something that you're still struggling with?
Not really, honestly. I always joke and say that my boyfriend cured my eating disorder, which obviously he didn't. Nobody can do it except you. But once I met him, and he just changed my life in so many ways. He's just such a good person, and he introduced me to so many good people. But it was the first time that like we were going on dates, and I was like, yeah, I can have fries and burgers with this guy, or yeah, I can totally have dessert with this guy. Like, I deserve this. I train 2 hours a day for 4 years. I can have, cookies now. And then I just got to a place with my body where I realized I don't have to be whatever image that I don't even know what I was trying to attain. I don't know who I was trying to impress. I guess people on the internet, people in high school who made fun of me. Like, I really don't know. And I love my body so much. I think I probably also had some type of eating disorder in terms of like working out way too much, like orthorexia, like being obsessed with what I was putting in my body and counting calories. But now it's like I go to the gym when I can make it, and I eat as best as I can and fuck up on the weekends a lot.
Did you ever lose like a lot of weight to where?
No.
Okay, thank
I
goodness.
didn't.
I mean,
No,
you
I
look
didn't
great.
lose. Thank you. Thank you. I actually didn't lose weight. Like, I look the best right now than I've ever looked. And like, even my body was just holding on to everything because the way I was like binging and then just trying to go on these crash diets for 2 weeks, my body never had a chance to be skinny. And like, as I'm chewing this stuff and spitting it out, my body's still intaking sugar. My metabolism or my glucose is like spiking. I don't know the science of nutrition, to be honest, but I know that by doing that, I wasn't helping myself at all. And then when I just started eating pizza when I wanted to and trying to be a generally healthy person, that's when weight just fell off my body.
Well, you mentioned your boyfriend, and I
Mhm.
remember seeing a video of you two eating a peanut butter and pickle sandwich and
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really enjoying that.
yeah,
but, but loving relationships really make a difference to our daily
totally.
daily mental health. How has he made you feel since now you feel like you're in a good, healthy, loving relationship?
Mhm.
How has
It's
it been?
day and night, dude. Like, it's so crazy how much having good people in your life who just accept you and support you, how much it can change you. Because like he's so opposite to me, where I'm very high strung. I catastrophize everything. I talk a lot. I express a lot, and he's really level headed. He's really calm, and he's really good at diffusing situations. Like, he was able to show me my toxic behaviors without telling me that I was toxic, because I was dating toxic people. I was friends with toxic people. So if I was displaying a toxic behavior, I was met with toxicity, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And with him, it's like if I act in a way that's like a little irrationally or a little unfair, he doesn't react in a way that's toxic. So then I'm just sit in my own toxicity, and I'm like, now I feel dumb because you're being really rational and kind. And then eventually those all actually very quickly, those behaviors just fall away because it teaches you, oh, this is what healthy communication looks like. Like, you know what I mean? So just finding somebody who is so patient and loving and understanding of me, and like, he's always seen me. Like, he hasn't seen when I'm like stressed or like emotional. He's just like, no, like, you are a beautiful, talented, loving, caring, kind, compassionate person. And you got angry. Like, it's not you. You know what I mean? So just day and night.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Especially during pandemic and lockdown, to
Oh, yeah.
have like that day to day, 24/7 sometimes, you know,
Yeah,
um, because we've been dealing with a lot of stresses during this time.
absolutely. I don't know how I would have survived this past year without him. He moved in officially this past summer, but he'd been staying with me pretty consistent. I mean, very consistently since last October. So having him in my life as just like a true partner, that's been life changing for me.
That's really nice to hear. I'm so glad for you.
Thanks.
Um,
Same.
ah, you've kind of made your name on social media platforms. And social media kind of has been a hotbed for cyberbullying and teasing and negativity.
Mhm.
And, I know that you've experienced some hurtful comments, but I was wondering if you can give me some examples of that with what you've done with social media.
Sure. Yeah, social media was really hard for me for a minute, and now I think I've finally kind of figured out my balance with it. Social media from I started using it when I was like 13 years old, maybe, because like when MySpace was first big and AIM and stuff. So to me, the internet was always kind of my safe place, and that's how I kind of got into it. Um, and there's always bullying. Like, even when I was first posting on Vine back in 2013, there's comments about my nose, and I was chubbier at the time. So comments about my weight, comments about my appearance, comments about my voice, or calling me annoying, whatever. And those things hurt, but you can kind of brush them off, and you can get defensive about it, but whatever. At the end of the day, those aren't the things that stick in your brain. When people start attacking your character as a person, or telling you that you're lying about your mental illness, or for example, I've always been really open about, depression and CPTSD and like childhood abuse and trauma. And at some point, that when it was just kind of cool to try to attack my character, it was, she's pretending to be mentally ill so that she can play the victim. She wants you to feel sorry for her. It's like, no, dude, like, I'm talking about this because I wish that somebody was when I was younger. And it's okay to like express yourself and explain things without saying that you're not at fault. Those things can coexist. You can be at fault and say you're sorry and recognize that you weren't the best person in a moment. And you can also say, this is why it happened and this is what I've learned. But people don't generally like that, I guess. So I think that's where I started kind of getting wrapped up in it, is just like, a lot of people just using my name for clicks, people making up fake stories about me. And it got really ugly for a minute, where the stories were getting uglier and darker, and more people were just piling on. And, you know, painting someone as like a narcissistic, sociopathic, master manipulator, like, those words hurt. That's not the same as saying like your nose is big. Like, that's
Mhm.
attacking you to your core. And for me, it was also, we're talking about like the monsters living in the head. I know what I come from. I know how I was bred. I know what's in my genetics. And there's always a constant fear, not so much anymore now that I'm, finding my ground. But for a long time, there was a fear that I was crazy and I didn't know. Or when I look at, my mom, and she's so detached from her actions and truly cannot see reality. Of course, I question that in myself. So when people are calling me like a narcissist, when I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I don't think I'm being a narcissist at all. I don't think I'm being narcissistic. I care so much about everybody. And like, but do I? Am I? Am I a master manipulator and I don't know it? Is this a lie that I've created? Am I telling myself a story because I have these mental blockers up so that I can live day to day being a shitty person and not feeling bad about it? And that was my life for years, just constantly trying to figure out, am I a bad person or am I just being very aggressively attacked all the fucking time?
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out I was being really aggressively attacked for a long time.
Well, it's hard to control what people do, what people say and think. I guess all you could do is really, you know, change your reaction, change your attitude about it, because
Yeah,
unfortunately, there's always going to be cyberbullying, right?
totally.
Whether we like it or not. And there was a time when you kind of disappeared from social media.
Hmm.
Was there, what was like the final straw that made you say, you know what, I'm going to take a break and just, you know, be quiet for a bit?
There came a point where there were so many lies and it felt like I couldn't keep up with them. And every time, like I was trying to dispel them or disprove them, but that every time I tried, then it was, oh, well, she's a liar because of this, or here's this hole in this story, or it was a constant cycle. And the more I was responding, the more that people were feeding on it. And even if I was to say like, but this is the truth and I can prove it, people would say, be careful, she's a master manipulator, she's incredibly skilled at manipulating the truth to make you believe her, don't believe everything she says. So now I'm just like backed in this corner of like, you've painted me as somebody that could never defend themselves. And the actual final straw was I like recorded an episode of the podcast where I just like exposed all of it, where I was showing 6-year-old emails, 6-year-old text messages, showing an actual timeline of how my abuser had been treating me and the blackmail that they were holding over me. And it was like, to me, it was the only answer because I like to keep that shit private. There's no reason for me to be bringing up someone who I was barely friends with who's been blackmailing me for 6 years.
Mm.
And I wanted to put an end to it. And as I watched back the edit of it, I was just like, I'm no better than them. Like I'm going to drive myself fucking crazy. Like this had become an obsession because it was just like a frenzy. So I was like, okay, I can continue to do this. I can put all this out here, all of this incredibly personal information. I can drag these people all back into it with me, or I can make the choice to remove myself from the situation, accept what's happening, accept that I know the truth and my friends know the truth, and that the people who love me will be here for me and understand me. And no matter what happens at the end of the day, if I lose everything and I go live in the woods with my boyfriend in Colorado, I have a pretty sick fucking life. So I was just like, I have to back up. I'm not winning in this situation. I'm not happy in this situation. I have to change something. This is my change. And it worked. I feel a lot better.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's an example of like creating a boundary, right?
Yeah,
Saying like, you know what, I don't want to play this anymore. I'm stepping away from this, and the more you participate, the bigger it gets.
totally. Yeah.
Um, and so then you decided to come back.
Hmm.
And when you came back, what was the attitude that you had, after taking that break?
I wasn't nearly ready to come back when I did. I probably could have used another couple months at least. I was kind of forced to come back because I was contractually obligated to promote my book. My podcast production company had already sold ad spots on my show. So there was just, I had obligations. I had to be a big girl and come back to work and just fucking do it. But when I came back, I just came back with a new attitude of how much I was allowing it to affect me, how much of my time and personal energy I was allowing myself to put into it, what I was allowing myself to consume as well. So I was kind of just doing bare minimum for a minute, meeting the requirements of my contracts, um, trying to keep the show afloat for the sake of like my podcast team and stuff like that. And then this past couple months, like in December specifically, I finally found myself with my new channel in creating content that I actually want to create. So that's been a really fun journey for me to like start over. Like I made a brand new channel. It went from 7 million subscribers a couple years ago to 70,000 now. And like actually just genuinely having fucking fun again. And like why I started in the first place. I didn't start YouTube thinking I was going to be something huge. I started it because I fucking loved YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're getting back to your roots and you're feeling impassioned about the work that you're putting out there, the art that you're putting out there. And, one of the things we talk about on the podcast is also solutions, like things that have worked for you. And you seem very like you've really looked back and have some self-awareness of what was going on, like kind of like stepping away from yourself and being able to look a little bit more from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned therapy. What has that brought to your life, therapy?
To be completely honest, and this is like not advice that I'd like to give people because I think that I'm a very particular case. I actually found that I was holding myself back a lot in therapy because my social anxiety was so bad and my fear of being somebody that I didn't want to be was so bad that I was holding myself back a lot. So I would be like, my mom has borderline personality disorder. One of my biggest fears is being like her. So I would hold back pieces of information that would make me feel like, oh, well, if I say that, maybe that will confirm this thing that I am so afraid of. Or just feeling ashamed of something that I either happened to me or that I did and not wanting to talk about it. It was just really hard for me to break that boundary. So when I started talking to a camera by myself, just kind of freely speaking, which is what my new channel is, I was able to do it without fear and without hesitation because I knew that I had the edit. So I could explore every thought that came into my mind. I would stop and say, well, why do I feel that way? How did that affect me? Where did that come from? Is this a rational thought? Which are the things you're supposed to be doing in therapy that I was not doing. But it's just about exploring your own brain and being able to feel shame, because I think that's one of the hardest feelings, to feel shame. And when you're trying to be a better person, the first step in that is recognizing all the ways in which you are not your best self. And that can bring up some really ugly stuff.
Well, I think, being honest with yourself is really hard, because, you've kind of kept up walls for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think about the people that have really kind of told me the truth about how they feel about themselves or how they feel about a situation. And you always find that those are the moments that you really appreciate. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes, even with social media, we are trying to portray a certain lifestyle or a certain image. And when somebody posts something like, sometimes I wonder if I want to get up in the morning, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And you get the sense that, wow, that person's in a dark place, or, they really need some help, or
Yeah.
you could sense that it was very honest. You find that a lot of those posts can get, an authentic reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see where, being honest it's hard. It's hard to kind of strip away all of that, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Especially publicly.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, at one point you mentioned you had like 7 million subscribers. And
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you had a good friend come and ask you for advice. They want to be like a social media celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them?
Don't.
Step away
um,
now.
yeah, I think it's so tough just because I have such like a volatile relationship with it that if I could give myself advice, I'd say fucking run, like from the jump. But I think that's not fair because there's obviously a lot of people who don't have my experience with it. And it's just you have to not let the numbers validate you because I think that what happened with me was I'm a very accomplishment oriented person. I'm a very praise oriented person. So like I would rather take like the world knowing something amazing I did over $10 million. Like I've always gone for praise over money. It all goes back to your childhood with not receiving enough like love and attention or praise or whatever it is. And it's a confidence thing. So when I was getting really good numbers on social media, that to me was like the ultimate praise. Like I went from nothing, nobody knows, no one cares about me, to so many people are watching and listening. And the weight that I put on those numbers was really dangerous. And it makes for a really successful person. It makes for making a lot of money on the internet. It makes for a lot of good business opportunities. But I was not grounded. And you just have to make sure you're in a really good place and know what you're looking for and what it's worth to you, the sacrifice that you're willing to make to get it.
Well, one thing you mentioned is, you have had your subscribers change to where you said your channel might have 70,000, which is also a lot of subscribers. But how did that affect your mental health? Because if you were sort of thriving on this attention and then all of a sudden it seems to go down, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your head at that time?
Oh, I catastrophize everything. So my self-worth was very much tethered to these because that was my identity. Like before that, I didn't know who I was. It was just some girl that nobody cared about. I was a fucking speck in the universe. So, watching that change was like very anxiety inducing, but then I also jump 90 years ahead where, okay, well, if the subscribers aren't there, then I can't do music because this is how I pay for music. This is how I promote music. If I don't have fans on YouTube, then I won't have fans on Spotify. And it was all interconnected where my head took it to a place where I'm going to lose everything I've ever fought for and everything I've ever loved. And I'm going to go back to where I came from. And I'm going to go back to being, super poor and unhappy and in a bad part of town. And it's so illogical, but that's what my brain was telling me. Like you tell yourself lies.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the thing with anxiety and depression, and I'm sure with ADHD is that sometimes the thoughts that come into our head even scare us, right?
Yeah,
Because you
totally.
might
Yeah.
logically think, "Wait a second, this doesn't make any sense," but I believe it so much. You
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
talk a lot about anxiety, different kinds of anxiety, social anxiety and so forth. How have you learned to deal with it? Have you learned any coping skills through therapy, or how, what is working for you with the anxiety?
I'm in a pretty good place lately just through just practicing like real humility and real gratitude and being just so thankful and happy for what I've accomplished so far and how I live and the people in my life. So that's just been great in general, just to quell the fear of, oh, what if I'm never going to be somebody? Like I already am somebody. Like I'm enough. That's cool. Like I did some dope shit in my life. Like if I retire tomorrow, I have nothing else. Like I still won. You know what I mean? So that's helped a lot. The past week or so, I've been dealing with a really strong wave of anxiety as it was empty.
Okay, thank goodness.
No,
Okay.
it's fine. And it's been tough. And I was actually just talking with my boyfriend right before this call about like, dude, I have the fucking worst coping skills. I'm just so bad at dealing with stress. And if like something is bothering me, it kind of bleeds into other portions of my life. But I just try to be as honest as possible with everybody around me. Like, I was in the studio yesterday and I was like extremely anxious, and I could tell that my energy was palpable. Like, you could feel how tense I was. So I just try to like be really open and communicative with them. So like, hey, like, just don't take anything personally today. Like, if you feel like I'm in a bad mood, I am, but it's not because of you. And, I'm here and I'm excited to work. Let's create something dope. But like, if I communicate something in a way that hurts your feelings, like, it's not intentional, like, I'm not my best self today. And then like that just kind of sets the tone of like, okay, totally. Let's fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great communication. I mean, it sounds like some of the things that we have to, some of the talk that we do with our own personal relationships,
Yeah,
right? Like,
totally.
sometimes we're in a bad mood or we're hangry or something, and it comes out to the other person.
Hmm.
And, but it's always good to explain, where you're at. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes things that happen with ourselves or with other people, it could be, oftentimes it's something else. It could be something else,
Oh
right?
yeah, totally. And I know that like I've also experienced it on the other end where like I can tell somebody's off, or like there was like a week or so where like I was like, "Oh my god, is like my boyfriend not like me anymore?" And then it's just like, "Oh no, he's dealing with his own shit too." Like, sometimes he has a bad week at work, and sometimes he's feeling lost in life, and that makes him a little more distant sometimes. And like, it's not that he's a distant person, it's not that he doesn't care about me. It's just like understanding that not everything's about you in both directions.
Right, right. So now, you know, what are some of the daily things that you do to kind of keep your mental health in check, kind of like your mental health toolbox?
Hmm. For me, it's creating every day. As long as I'm feeling productive and like moving forward, hygiene is important, which is like the past like year or so, I didn't even realize. Excuse me. Just like what taking care of my skin and like washing my face, not just to remove my makeup, like waking up and going to bed and make sure I'm washing my face, like brushing my hair, putting in my earrings, and just like doing a little bit just to make myself feel like a human and feeling good about yourself. Like, relaxing, I think, is really important. And I saw a fucking meme on Instagram of all things that said relaxing is not a waste of time. And coming from somebody who's a chronic workaholic, that's something that I've been really coming to terms with, is like, I need to take a day off. I need to stop working at a certain point through the night. I don't have to, if I'm awake, that doesn't mean I have to be busy. I can take a lunch break where I'm not also answering emails. So just, being kind to myself. I also learned that an ADHD trait is over planning and not giving yourself enough time to do the thing. And oh, that'll take 20 minutes. And it really is something that takes 4 hours. And you're like, why the fuck is my life falling apart? I'm a worthless human being. But then once you learn that behavior,
Mhm.
you can plan better. So it's just all around. I think the general tip is just be kinder to yourself, be forgiving to yourself, give yourself a little bit of grace. You're not perfect. You're not a superhero. It'll work out.
Okay. One thing I thought that was really interesting with you is that you kind of started on the internet, but then you kind of changed into being a like a singer-songwriter.
Hmm.
And how did that happen? Because you've got these great music videos and you've got this nice strong voice. And was that
Thank
ever
you.
part of your career plan?
None of this was my career plan. This all happened on accident. It all started with just like fucking around on Vine, and then I started YouTube, and then I really wanted to write a poetry book. So I wrote a poetry book, and then I wrote a song to promote the poetry book. And then that song did really well, and it gave me the confidence to continue on with my music career, which was always the dream. Like, when I was a kid, I was pretending like I was a rock star. I used to draw myself in the front of uh, a girl band, like playing guitar. But it just wasn't a realistic thing. To me, it was the same as fantasizing about being like the president, which is also attainable, you know what I mean? But like, I never, that's why I also say that like, I've already done enough. Like, I didn't expect myself to do any of this shit. And it's cool that I did, but yeah, always a dream, but wasn't really a part of the plan.
Mm. Yeah, you dropped 2 songs from an upcoming album that's coming out, right? And it's called, the album is this time next year.
We'll see.
Well, not sure.
I might change it.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
I had it for, it was like 3 years ago I started writing those songs and I started talking about that album. And now I'm just in a place where like I'm so different and the music that I'm making is so different and the messages that I want to convey are so different. And I don't know, I'm in like this weird kind of limbo of just creating what I want and seeing where it goes. But we'll see if that's still the album name in a few months.
Well, you know what? I think when I listen to albums, it's almost like a slice of someone's life, right?
Yeah.
Because they're writing about what's going on in their life. And I don't know, I always find that interesting. So, the fact that you're changing, it sounds like you're really coming into some good chapters in your life,
Totally. Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
wonderful, because this whole thing is a journey and sometimes we really don't know where it's going, but we kind of do the best to kind of keep going, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm super excited for the future. This is the most excited that I've ever been, like the most optimistic. I can feel the energy shifting. I know that this year is going to be fucking incredible for me and the people around me. So I'm just excited.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm very excited for you too. I mean, is there anything else that you'd like to say about mental health or about Gabbie Hanna and what you're doing?
Totally. Just like, this is the first time in my life, like they always say, like, oh, it gets better. Uh, the depression will get better. There's going to be better times. And I finally got there. And like, we're at the point now where it's like, oh, it got better. Like for real, it actually finally fucking did. It took 15 fucking years, but we're here. And I just want to like give that message of it may take longer than you think, but if you give up on yourself, like you're not giving yourself the chance to let it, especially if you're somebody who's like suicidal, like for sure nothing is going to be worse than death, like absolutely. And if you want to kill, like if you want to like literally kill yourself, you don't want to kill yourself, you want to kill the thing that's inside of you. So focus on killing that instead, because that's possible, and then you can actually enjoy that part of you being dead.
Right.
It got really like bleak really fast.
No, but what you're saying really is true though. It's, when people have depression or anxiety, ADHD, you talked about body dysmorphia. Those are all things that need to be dealt with.
Totally.
And once you get balanced, once you get better, you're saying that your true personality can come out.
Totally.
And everyone's personality and their, creativity can blossom, because things like depression and anxiety they're blocks.
Yeah.
They're trying to pull us in one way. So we really need to fight, I think, for a good life and good mental health.
Sorry, my computer was about to die, so I'm just like going to my charger.
I was like,
wondering why we're mobile now.
I was like, are you giving me a tour of your house? I really enjoy this so far. Are you like in the kitchen and gonna make me some pasta or something?
I'd love to make you some pasta.
That would be awesome. But okay, so that sounds good. Anyways,
the pasta?
The pasta sounds fantastic. But I wish you all the best with
Thank
your
you.
music, social media, and the authoring all your books and things like that. And just
Thank
keep
you.
going. Just keep going.
Same to you. I really appreciate what you're doing. I love that you have this podcast and the message that you're trying to spread. And I think what you're doing is incredible. I think you're an amazing woman and very kind. And I really enjoyed talking to you. So thank you for allowing me to come.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, Gabbie, you did great. You did great.
Thank you.
So I I will let you know when the episode drops. It might take a little bit because I've got to do the
Take your
editing and
time.
all that stuff, but I have your music. I'm going to include it in the episode, and you know, make sure to promote whatever it is that
Thank
you're
you.
working on. Uh, but you know, I'm going to share it on social media. And if you could, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
But only, if you feel good about it and you feel right
I
about
think this was a great talk. This
it.
is good. I really liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really feel for you. And I felt like that you were being very honest and very sincere about, all the challenges you've gone through. But I also sense like a maturity from it, because I feel like you talk as if you're just very self-aware. And sometimes, we have to step back to be self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you have this loving relationship, let me tell you, my boyfriend now,
Mm-hmm.
because I could totally relate to all the narcissistic stuff. I used to
Yeah.
attract narcissists, and but he has really helped balance me.
Totally.
And I tell him the same thing, like you're kind of a workaholic. I am too. I
Mm-hmm.
can't stop thinking about it, and I'll tell him. I said, "You'll need to drag me away. Let's eat dinner." I actually put alarms on my phone to tell me you need to take an hour for lunch, things like that. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
he's a wonderful balance for you and that he's giving you that intimate, real sweet love.
Yeah, honestly, it's the fucking best. I'm so happy you have that too. I was gonna ask earlier, but I was like, oh, but if she's like single, then like that sucks. You know what I mean?
I know,
I'm like, yeah, I have this like amazing relationship. What about you? Oh no. Hmm.
I know that would be awkward.
Yeah, but I'm really happy you have that too, because it's really like it's life changing. It's really true when they say you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And like if you're spending your time with fucking bullies, you're going to be a bully. If you're spending your time with narcissists, you're going to end up being narcissistic. If you
Hmm.
hang out with like loving, empathetic, cool, creative, kind, non-dramatic people, you're going to be that.
Yeah. And I do think that, he loves you fully. So,
Mhm.
you're talking about how, had some body issues. If he makes you feel so beautiful, that stuff is going to fall away. And I know, I stayed single for a good amount of time, and I needed time just to heal. But
Mhm.
now I realize just that intimacy, just that, someone giving you a hug every day, you know,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my
Yeah,
gosh,
he's so
so
affectionate.
good. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm
It's
happy.
life
It
changing. Like to
is
just
life
like
changing.
yeah, like sometimes it like is and I'm like happy about it. Like it gets to the point where it's like, dude, I gotta fucking do shit. Stop hugging me.
I know, because it's weird, right? It's weird, but I found that
But I'd rather have more than less.
I know I finally like have embraced it, and it feels so good to have somebody that wants to spend time with me, where I
Totally.
take care of him and he takes care of me. We give
Yeah.
and we receive, and it's this like healthy cycle that happens. So,
Yeah. He made me feel like when I like along with that joke of he cured my eating disorder, I just like never didn't feel sexy around him.
mhm.
Like there was never a moment where I was like embarrassed to be naked. There was never a moment where I like was worried about what my stomach looked like or what the angles like I was just comfortable. So I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, what the fuck?" Like and then I put on a
Mhm.
little weight in quarantine and like it never for a second was I like concerned that he might not look at me the same way. He's always made me feel sexy. And then I was like, why the fuck
Aw.
am I micromanaging my food like this? I can eat whatever the fuck I want. I have him.
Aw, that's so sweet. Well, it was great to talk with you, and you know, keep in touch if you ever have anything you need. Just I'm always here.
Same to you.
So,
Reach out whenever.
all right, take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye bye.
Bye.